Welcome back to the official Cubase YouTube channel. My name is Stevie B, and this is part 3 of the indie rock series where we are writing, mixing, and mastering a song from scratch. In the last couple of videos, you've seen me transform a few simple ideas into a fully arranged track, and we are absolutely ready to throw down some vocals. That's what this video is all about. I'm going to share some thoughts about writing vocals, and we are also going to do a bit of vocal processing in this video as well. I'll also share a few final touches that I'm going to add to the track. I think you'll find this all very interesting. Let's get right into it. All right, so I've had the chance to record some vocals for this track. Let me show you what's going on in this session. So in pink here, you're seeing my vocal take, and then below that we have a left and right vocal from my friend Jasper in light blue, and these are panned left and right. Now what I'm about to show you is completely unprocessed. There's no plugins whatsoever on these vocals. There's no tuning, no compression, nothing. So they sound pretty raw. I think a lot of people prefer to record vocals with some processing already applied. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I like to record and monitor my own vocal with no processing applied whatsoever. And if I'm pretty happy with how it sounds, like completely dry, then I know that I'm going to be able to get it to where it needs to go without too much trouble. Let's take a listen to the chorus. Here we go.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown. They'll stop and nothing to slow me down. When I've been tearing loose at the seams, and you've been standing in the way of my dreams. There ain't nothing that can hold me back. I'm living free and it's all that I got. When Lord knows they'll try to break me down, I'm holding steady and my heart's unbound. It's alright, it's alright.
Okay, so a few things to talk about here. For one thing, there's a few tuning issues here and there. It's not brutal, but we're probably going to need to make a few adjustments. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And you can also just see visually looking at the audio here that it's a very dynamic take. There's some words that are considerably louder than others. I'm not the world's best singer. I don't have, as much control as I'd like, but that's okay because we could fix that with some compression. So this is really a perfect example of why he'd want to use a compressor on a vocal. Jasper's takes are a little bit more even, so that's nice. And they do offer a really nice complement to my vocals. So listening to him on his own.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
And listening to mine on its own.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
So I'm a much louder singer than Jasper. That's why you're hearing some of the reflection in the room here. My little studio office here isn't the most ideal recording environment for vocals, to be honest. But that's totally okay. I still think we got some vibe here to work with. We're not looking for absolute perfection. I think it's going to sound great once we add a bit of processing to it. And these vocals were both recorded using my Rode NT1 wide diaphragm microphone. I've had this mic for a long, long time. Gotten a lot of good use out of it. One thing that I do want to mention is that I'm always looking for ways to elevate the chorus. And that's primarily the reason that I brought my friend Jasper in to do these backup vocals. And you'll notice that the verse energy is quite a bit tighter, more intimate. I'm in a lower register with the vocal as well. So there's a really big contrast in energy between this verse and going into the chorus. I'll just play it halfway through this verse and coming into the chorus. You'll see what I mean.
The future is unclear, I've been running blind, and I just can't shake this devil out of my mind. Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
So the combination of Jasper's vocals, me coming up significantly into the upper ranges of my register, and then also adding the 2 electric rhythm guitars, which we spoke about in the last video. All of these things help to elevate the chorus and really make it stand out. And that's always what I'm trying to achieve. Coming to the end of the track here, if you remember, our power chorus is going double time, and I kind of had like a different idea in mind for what the vocals were going to do during this section. Let me just play this for you.
I'm holding steady and my heart's unbound. It's alright, it's alright. It's alright, it's alright. It's alright, it's alright. It's alright, it's alright. It's alright, it's alright.
It kind of has like a sing-along vocal chant kind of vibe. So the first thing I'm going to do to my vocals before I add processing is I'm just going to do a bit of light tuning. I don't like to hard tune vocals in general. I mean, it's especially not the style that we're going for in this track. I want it to sound natural. And I'm only going to do some tuning to my vocals. Jasper is a much better singer. He's got much better pitch control than I do. And so I think he's good. I don't really have to mess with his vocal too much. This second verse in particular is a little pitchy here and there. To work with VariAudio, you just double click the vocal region that you want to work with. That'll bring up the sample editor window. In the inspector here on the left, we're just going to click Edit VariAudio. And just like that, you get a nice visual representation of the pitch of this vocal. So first thing I'm going to do is set my smart controls to show all smart controls. And VariAudio has some interesting tools that can come in handy. For example, the scale assistant. Set the scale to E major here. And we can tell it to show the scale note guides and snap pitch editing so that when we make our adjustments to these notes, we've got the right suggestions for where to move things in the scale so that we're staying in the key of E major. Now, in this case, I'm not going to use the scale assistant, and I'm also going to keep the pitch snap mode off. And to be honest, I'm just going to do some micro adjustments to these notes. I honestly don't mind if it's a little bit out of tune here and there. There's going to be some natural variation. That's just the nature of, of being human. So the way things are starting off here is kind of a good example of where I might do like just a tiny bit of shifting.
Well, it's all the same, yeah, I've played your games before.
The end part of this feels good to me. These two guys can come up just a little bit. Let's take a listen.
Well, it's all the same, yeah, I've played your games before.
So it's a real micro difference, but it's just a bit more consistent overall. Let's come to the next line.
And all of this pain, it's what you got in store.
Let's bring this down just a bit. So if we just select one of these notes and you come over to the inspector here on the left, we can correct the pitch like so. And you can see how it's moving this note down just a little bit. That's one way to do it. And Cubase is going to have an idea of where it thinks that the pitch should be. But honestly, I tend to do this by ear. I'm only correcting the things that really bother me. Like I said, if it's a bit off, it's all good. Okay, so check this third line out.
Isn't that cold in my mind, like words unsaid?
Here's another thing that we can do. This low note here, mind, you could see that there's a lot of vibrato. And we could use VariAudio to straighten out the curve. So if we push this forward, you see how things start to get a little bit more flat. We got to be careful with this feature because if you push it all the way, you're going to completely flatten it out and it's going to sound a little bit weird. The more you push this straightened curve, the weirder it sounds. But there is an awful lot of vibrato on that note, so let's just see if we can straighten it out a bit. Maybe at around 30%. See what that sounds like.
Isn't that cold in my mind, like words unsaid?
And that feels just ever so slightly more controlled. I'm going to even these out here just a bit. And here's another instance where straightening the curve could be useful. If you listen carefully to the way that this vocal starts, it's a little shaky to start.
Isn't that cold?
So just selecting that, let's straighten it out a bit.
Isn't that cold in my?
Let's bring the pitch up ever so slightly.
Isn't that cold in my mind?
Perfect. Again, over here.
Isn't that cold in my mind, like words unsaid?
This guy's a bit flat. Push that up, and that should be perfect.
Isn't that cold in my mind, like words unsaid?
Again, right here, you can see it's a bit uncontrolled. We want to straighten the curve a bit on that. We can try.
Isn't that cold in my mind, like words unsaid?
So things are still sounding natural, but just more controlled, and the pitch is now feeling right on point. Okay, listening to the last bit of this verse.
And I just can't shake this devil out of my head.
Okay, so here's an example of where I would make a cut actually, because there's a pitch difference between here and here, but Cubase didn't quite catch it. So if I click on Option, it brings up my scissors tool. Let's make a cut, and let's try bringing this up.
Out of my head.
Let's flatten that out.
Out of my head. Out of my head.
Maybe bring that up.
Take this devil out of my head.
And that's probably a bit too much. Let's chill that out a bit. Gonna bring these guys up a little. One last listen.
And I just can't shake this devil out of my head.
Cool, so the pitch, it's not perfect, but it's rock and roll. It's all good. All right, so let's throw some VocalChain on my vocals and see what happens. So loading up this plugin, and I gotta say, I am just a huge fan of this plugin. Everything that I need to make this vocal sound awesome is just right here in front of me, just a click away. I love it. So we're gonna solo this chorus section, and I wanna make sure that my input gain is coming up around this green section here. Let's check that out.
Everybody knows.
Great. So check out how easy this is. First thing I'm gonna do, let's throw a cut filter on. I'm gonna cut some of this low energy, starting to dip around 100 and below. Don't need any of that. There's also a high cut here, which If I wanted things to sound a bit more vintage, I could, push this high cut filter a bit more. Listening.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
But I'm not going to push it that far. I do want some of that crispiness. VocalChain also has like a pitch correction component built into it. I'm not going to use that, obviously, because we've already done a bit of pitch correction. I much prefer to do that with VariAudio. We've got a few things under the clean tab here. De-esser, dynamic filter, compressor. I'm going to add a bit of compression.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
We can see how much gain reduction we're doing here. We can also use this in parallel if we want to. I'm not going to for this compressor. I'm applying a pretty healthy amount of compression to glue it together. We also have a few options here in terms of which compressor we want to use. I'm going to try the black valve. I just like the way it sounds.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
Okay, so gluing it together a bit. Let's come down to our EQ. We also have a few options with which EQ we want to use. Studio, P1A, M5. I'm going to choose the P1A, and I'm going to do a slight boost around 4K.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
Just want to draw a bit of that sizzle out. Starting to sound nice. Let's come down to the character tab here. We got a few options that we can add, starting with the exciter. You got to be careful with this exciter. It really has a drastic effect on the sound. For example, if we push this clarity up all the way, you're essentially just like boosting the air big time. Doesn't necessarily sound good.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
Can maybe add a bit of clarity. And the exciter amount is at about 20.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
That sounds good, about 40%. I think it's important to get out of the habit of doing all your processing with your tracks in solo, because ultimately it really only matters how it fits into the entire mix picture in context. So let's check back in on the mix.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
You can really hear how that black valve compressor especially, and the exciter, just has such a profound effect on the vocal presence. It just feels so much more punchy and impactful. So I do want to add some saturation to this vocal as well. And we do have some options here. We have tape, tube, and distortion. I don't particularly like the sound of the distortion. I like the tube and the tape. Let's try tube. The really cool thing about this saturator in this plugin is that we can isolate where we're applying the saturation. We'll click filter bank here. And just so you know exactly what you're doing, you can solo this and you can monitor exactly which range in the vocal you're saturating. Let's throw this in solo.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
Okay, let's take it out of solo.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal.
Okay, mix at 100%. Sounds a bit intense, but I do like quite a bit of the saturation in the mix. Really suits the rock vibe of this track. Let's try about like 75%.
Everybody knows.
Checking back on the mix.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
That sounds pretty good. So keep in mind, using this filter bank here, I'm only saturating between around 900 hertz to 7.2 kilohertz. It's kind of the sweet spot for me. So for character's sake, we could add some more compression if we want to. We don't have to do this, but something that could be fun to experiment with is using extreme compression, but in parallel. So let's enable this dry wet knob here. Let's try compressing at 100%, and we're going to bring our dry wet mix down to something pretty small, like 10 or 15 to start. See what that sounds like.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown. They'll stop and up and slow me down.
Okay, we're starting to sound really nice and punchy. One thing I do need to take care of though is some de-essing. And again, we can listen to exactly where the sibilance is coming from. We just got to click this listen option here. So you can really zone in on the problem with this feature. Okay, so applying some reduction to that. And then finally, we also have this option for an imager, delay, and reverb. I'm going to add just a little bit of reverb to the vocal. Let's choose a small studio. I want something tight and intimate.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
So bringing the time down, send is up pretty high.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
And this is a really handy feature here too, the amount ducker. So when I'm singing, it'll duck the reverb out of the way.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
We still have Jasper's vocals to deal with. Let's just turn those down in the mix slightly.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
So it's got a real rock and roll vibe to it now. I'm kind of leaning into that like Strokes style, saturated vibe. Maybe not quite as crazy as the Strokes, but I want it to sound edgy. And I think we're getting pretty close. I think I actually prefer a little bit less reverb, to be honest. I'm just going to take this down a bit.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
That sounds great. So I want Jasper's vocals to just kind of sit behind mine and sort of mesh well in the mix. It's not going to require a lot of processing. Let's take a look at them. First thing I'm going to do is send his vocals into a group. So just right-clicking on them and choosing Add Group Channel to selected channels. Call it Jasper. And let's add the VocalChain to Jasper's group track. I'm going to add a cut filter to it.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
I'm going to add a compressor. Let's use the black valve compressor again.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
Also going to use the P1 AEQ, and we're going to boost these highs a little. I'm going to boost at around 6K or so. And I'm going to attenuate just a bit of these mids and low mids. Let's hear how that sounds against my vocals.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
Okay, bringing Jasper down in the mix. I'm going to de-ess Jasper's vocals a bit too. And let's try messing with a bit of reverb. I haven't tried Lush Pop yet. Let's try that, see what it sounds like.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown.
That sounds really cool. I'm going to add some ducker to it. Let's bring Jasper down a bit. And let's hear how that sounds in the context of our track.
Everybody knows anywhere you go, they'll try to steal your crown. They'll stop and nothing to slow me down.
So that feels pretty darn good for vocals. I'm really happy with the way that turned out. I absolutely love that all of the processing is available to me in one single plugin. And at this point, I think we're ready to mix the whole track. So that's what we're gonna do next. Okay, that's gonna do it for this video. That was a lot of fun. I really hope you enjoyed that. I feel like the track is really coming together. I really enjoyed messing around with the VocalChain plugin. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already. So the next video in this series is all about mixing and mastering. I'm really excited to get into all of that. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button for me, subscribe to the channel, throw your thoughts down below, and I will see you soon.